Hello, everyone. Hoping you can all hear me. If not, I can't even see you, so I'm just going to talk into a void, which is what I do most days anyway. Welcome back to our summer season of BFI Film Academy Labs. My name is Jake Cunningham, and it's very lovely to be talking with you today. Just to let you know a bit about myself, I'm the BFI Network Officer for Film Hub Southeast, and my job is to connect filmmakers and organisations across the region through professional development and events in physical cinemas and in online spaces like this one. I'm also a writer and a producer. I work in film, audio, print and online content, and I've made things about film for the BBC, Amazon Prime, written for Empire Magazine, Film 4 and lots of other things. And I make films myself too, with my last one premiering at last year's BFI London Film Festival. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And just to give you a bit more information as well, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a white man with a bird's nest of brown curly hair that looks very bad today. I've got a blue and white stripy shirt on, and I'm sat in front of a light blue wall that has a poster for Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven on it. And today's session, which I'm very, very excited about, is called Film Trailer Design. And that's with Mark Towers from Curzon. And how today's session is going to work is that there's going to be a lovely interview between Mark and one of our young film programmers, Tom. And that's going to be getting into Mark's work as a marketer for Curzon, Mark's work as a filmmaker, and the crux of today's conversation, Mark's work within trailers as well. And we're going to be looking at a few trailers that Mark's worked on and getting into the nitty-gritty of how they get made. And then after that, we'll have a Q&A, which is your opportunity to ask Mark whatever you like about his career and about trailer design as well. Now, Mark, it's lovely to have you with us. Do you want to join the call and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Cool, yes. I'm the distribution and creative lead at Curzon. My pronouns are he, him. I am a white man with blonde hair, medium to long length, blue eyes. I'm sitting in a white room with a breakfast room table in the background with some flowers on it. And I'm very happy to be here today to talk about making trailers and making movies.
And so Mark will never big himself up so much, so I'll do it for him. But as well as being the distribution and creative lead at Curzon, Mark's been working in this industry for over a decade now. He has won 4 different Screen Awards, and he's worked on amazing campaigns like films for like Apostasy, The Souvenir, The Square, Flea, a little film called Parasite, which you might have heard of, which we may get a little glimpse at later on, and most recently the amazing Irish language film The Quiet Girl. And he's also a filmmaker, and his shorts have screened at Raindance, Leeds Film Festival, Underwire and Fright Fest too. And now it gives me great pleasure to pass over the conversation. My responsibility, at least for the next 20 minutes or so, is done. Here is our lovely young film programmer, Tom Dwyer.
Hi everyone, nice to be here, nice to talk to Mark. Just to give you a bit of information about myself. I'm a white male, 26 years old. I've got quite long hair, which is tied back currently, and it's exposing a very pink sunburnt forehead, which I got at the weekend. I'm wearing a green jumper, and I'm sitting in a whitish living room. Yeah, so it's a real pleasure to talk to you, Mark. I started out mostly doing film programming in Brighton, and since then I've done some short filmmaking and also marketing, both in film programming and for film festivals, but also just as my general job as well. So it's really interesting to kind of talk to someone who's also combining all those practices, but is like much further along in their career. And I'm sure a lot of the young film programmers that are here will have had a similar kind of experience of having to market their events and having lots of interests in different areas of films. So first off, would it be possible for you to just give us a bit of a overview of your current role, your primary job, I suppose, because I understand it covers quite a lot of different elements of marketing it goes on.
Yeah, so when I started at Curzon, I was just on the distribution side. So for anyone who doesn't know, Curzon's a little unusual because they have the cinemas, which probably everyone knows them the best for. Then there is a distribution label, so their film label basically. And then there's also the VOD platform, which is Curzon Home Cinema. So I used to work on just the distribution portion of that, but now I'm across all of those. So I do creative marketing, so the creative side of things, the aesthetic side of things, actually stuff that's not even marketing. So, getting involved, which is a joy in the interior design and decor of like the new sites that go up. But distribution is, my title has that in there because I am leading the marketing side of that the most. So kind of got a finger in all parts of the Curzon pie at the moment.
Yeah, so how do you how did your career kind of develop into this point where you were able to cover so many aspects of the distribution and that in the company?
So well, would you like me to start where I started off? Because actually it wasn't in the film industry. It was sure. I had the misfortune of graduating university in the aftermath of the 2008 recession, which was not fun to find a job, let alone one in the film industry. And I ended up finding one at a job website in marketing, which I thoroughly detested and hated with every fiber of my being, and got very depressed because I was thinking maybe this is what all jobs are like and I should just suck it up. But I was there for 18 months and then left with no other job to go to. And I started looking for other stuff in the film and television industry. And my plan B was, if I didn't, I'd go backpacking in New Zealand and do some volunteer work or something. But fortunately, I don't know, maybe I would have had a great time in New Zealand. So maybe unfortunately, but fortunately, I found a job at Turner Broadcasting, an internship, and on their marketing and PR team. And I was working on things on Cartoon Network, like Cartoon Network and TCM, tiny little bit of CNN, but mostly their entertainment brands. So a lot of kids TV. TCM obviously is classic movies, so doing a lot of work on classic movies. And then through that, I stayed there for 2.5 years and then got a job at Curzon doing, I was a home end product manager. So that is basically the artwork and the synopsis writing and everything for DVD sleeves and Blu-ray sleeves. This was 2014, so physical was a little bit more prominent then. We'd release every title on physical disc. But also involved in the VOD, obviously streaming was around then as well, and I'm working on that. And then after that, jumped into the theatrical marketing team, so working on the current releases that are going out into the cinemas, so posters and trailers and the whole marketing campaigns around that. Worked on that for a few years, and then finally kind of got into the role I'm in now, which is across the wider business.
Okay, and so was the film element something that you were always interested in pursuing? Was that what your degree was in? Or?
No, my degree was in literature and philosophy, actually.
Okay.
So no, I haven't had any formal film training or anything like that. Whilst I was at that job I hated, I was doing a lot of running at the weekends to try and build up a CV of that kind of thing to try and break in a bit, and also to learn to make up for that lack of formal training. You know, just being on sets and asking dumb questions to people who are far too busy to answer me, but like, what do you do and stuff. They probably thought, why are you here? How do you get this job? But I was just trying to learn, and also I was wanting to make my own films, so I was like, you know, trying to find out how to run a set and everything, and learning. You saw the good sets and how they were run, and the bad ones, and all that kind of stuff, and what to learn from all of that on very low budget independent horror films and music videos and stuff like that. A lot of music videos.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really interesting, because I mean, you do hear about runner work being kind of a very crucial way to learn the ropes, even though maybe it's certainly not seen as, and probably isn't one of the most glamorous roles. But yeah, sounds like something that's definitely worth pursuing. It kind of leads us quite nicely into talking more about your work as a filmmaker. So you say you wanted to make your own short films. You have done that. Obviously, you've made a number of short films, and you're currently developing a feature as well, right?
Yeah. We're in the early stages of that. We're financing that at the moment, basically.
Right, interesting. So how do you find those two roles, this your role at Curzon and working on your own creative projects? How did you find those intertwine? Are they easy to fit together?
Yeah, I think so. I work supportive of that, and I'm very fortunate to be, you know, obviously working in the film industry, so I'm not parking one area of my brain completely to go and do the filmmaking stuff. You know, they're not like completely disparate things. That not to say that that's impossible. I think that's very possible, but I can be kind of in that same. I'm fortunate enough that my job is about breaking down story and analyzing it, albeit from the opposite end. You're coming to a finished product, and you're kind of reverse engineering it almost to market it, rather than obviously filmmaking. You're engineering it from the ground up. So there is, you know, there's a work-life balance you have to strike, and I think anyone who wants to make films is doing it because they think it's fun, I would imagine, and sometimes you have to keep reminding yourself that it's fun, because it does become something where you're unfortunately competing for resources with other people, and there's a lot of stress that goes into that, and near misses, and getting your hopes up and then having them shattered and everything, and having to re-roll and go again. But as long as you keep reminding yourself that, you know, this should be fun, I think that's a way to keep some sanity and not have any work-life balance ruined for you or people who are close to you.
Yeah, I can imagine it's difficult to fit both in time-wise, but yeah, it's interesting that you say that about the two things feeding into each other in terms of a story perspective and breaking down stories. I think that'd probably be a good time to look at some of the trailer work that you've done, where you're breaking down these stories. So should we take a look at the clip for Parasite first? And
sure, go for it.
뭐야, 소독해? 창문 닫아.
나도 봐. 공짜로 집안에 소독도 하고.
부모님 얼굴도 뵙고 좋더라. 건강들 하시고.
일거리가 없으셔도.
네가 내 대신 얘 과외 선생님 좀 해줘라. 영어.
대학생인 척하라는 거야?
구라를 좀 치지 뭐.
넌 이 좋은 실력으로 왜 미대는 맨날 떨어지냐?
아이씨, 죽을래.
저는 이게 위조나 범죄라고 생각하지 않아요.
참으로 시의적절하다. 부자들이 원래 참 잘 속아.
그래서 사모님이 뭐랄까.
풀타임으로 수업 어떻게 하시는지. Is it okay with you? 우리 다송이는 완전 예술가 재질인데.
침팬지를 그린 거죠?
자화상이에요.
역시.
그동안 그동안 미술쌤도 여러 명 바꿔가면서 해봤는데요.
제가 사람 하나가 휙 하고 떠올랐는데
아 잠깐. 제시카 외동딸 일리노이 시카고 과선배는 김치모 그는 이사촌.
부자인데 착하다니까.
진짜 니가 착한 거지. I'm deadly serious.
근데 지금 진짜로 이상한 게 뭔 것 같아.
Yeah, okay. It's been a while since I've seen that trailer, but yeah, I mean, just looking at it and trying to think about it without knowing what the that center point twist is, makes me think it must have been a challenge for you going into that and thinking about how you were going to break that story down. Were there challenges like that when you were doing it?
Yeah, 100%. Because also Bong Joon-ho was very prescriptive in that we don't spoil anything after for anyone who's seen it. There's a twist that becomes, you know, turns the film kind of upside down, and we weren't allowed to spoil much or any of that. So you would have seen there are some shots past that point in the film, but they're very brief, and we kind of had to pass those by director Bong to get his approval. But the other challenge of that was trying to make the film not look like a polite drama, which it can do from the beginning. And that trailer, I should say, a lot of that was led by Neon, the US distributor. So we didn't make that on our own, but we were sending notes over and stuff, and we'd get rounds back. And we, you know, I think it was their idea to do that mutation of the doorbell sound. So when the doorbell's pressed, it kind of starts reverberating and then like mutates into this like distorted noise, whilst the quote from Vulture magazine comes up, which says the film starts off as something and mutates into something else, which was just a godsend, because that's exactly what we needed. So the two of those, like, I think once you get halfway through the trailer, you start realizing what is this film going to do? And your job, especially on a thriller like that, I think your job as a marketeer is to start chucking up those question marks, you know, and that's why that curiosity is what people are paying for the ticket to have it sated. You know, you want to go through a story and those payoffs are paid off really satisfyingly, and you're hoping to pull that out from the film.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, Parasite was kind of an amazing success, right, in terms of box office and things, as well as in loads of other ways. But so going into it being a foreign language film and trying to, I guess, turn it into that sort of global breakout success, was that another challenge you were trying to think of how to overcome?
Unfortunately, I remember Bong saying this in his, I think his BAFTA or Oscar acceptance speech, that subtitles are a challenge when you're trying to break a film out to the mainstream, especially. It's a challenge anyway, but when it's beyond art house film fans who are well versed with dealing with subtitles, you know, it can be a problem. You can't really do much about that. I mean, I suppose we just try and make the film look as fun and engaging as possible, and you kind of hope that people will leave that at the door. And if they had any, you know, ill-conceived perceptions of subtitles or foreign language, that they leave that at the door and maybe make an exception this time. And And I think they did. I've got to say, we wanted the film to be successful, but I think it was beyond. I don't think anyone expected it to be that, you know, like made Oscar history and everything. And that probably convinced a whole bunch of people who wouldn't have otherwise gone to go and check it out, which is amazing for foreign language film in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we can talk about it a bit more with The Quiet Girl later. But I think you wanted to show a teaser as well of Parasite, which I think would be really interesting to look at for the difference between the two trailers. So
I think
maybe we can.
This is just to set it up, because I think it's interesting to see this. We called it a teaser. It came out afterwards, and you'll see how little plot exposition we're doing in this compared to the one you've just seen, because the audience already know, they've seen that first trailer, and you can kind of just chuck up more question marks, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
부잣집 과예요. 돈도 많이 줘. 네가 내 대신 얘 과외 선생님 좀 해줘라. 영어. 불화를 좀 치지 뭐.
서울대학교 문서 위조학과 뭐 이런 거 없나?
아버지, 저는 이게 위조나 범죄라고 생각하지 않아요.
너는 계획이 다 있구나.
아들, 딸, 남편, 와이프.
어울린다 그래야 되나? 이 부잣집 분위기랑 잘 맞아. 그럼 우리 바로 진행하는 거야?
이댁 식구들 참 잘 속아, 그지?
아유, 우리 제시카 아직 어려서 뭘 몰라, 선생.
계획이 없으니까 뭐가 잘못될 일도 없고 사람을 죽이건 나라를 팔아먹건 시발 다 상관없다 이 말이지.
나 잘 어울려? 잘 어울리냐고 여기.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're saying you've with this teaser, you don't have to focus on the story so much. So going into it, what are you thinking you can really emphasize like a stylistic kind of approach? Is that, or?
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, what's the main kind of different goal you're going for with this one?
So I think for that it was showing a little bit more of the darkness of the dark territory it was going. You saw we got a few more things past Bong Joon-ho in that one. Like there's that shot of the body being tugged down the stairway. That was one we had to persuade, but he agreed in the end and thought, because he could see, built off what we'd done with the previous trailer, that you're just trying to show again that this isn't going to be a kind of Desperate Housewives kind of thing in South Korea, that it's going to go some places that a more genre film lover might enjoy and like. And then I mean, just I think it's really important in trailers in general to set up, like the inciting incident, like that thing that you show the characters in their world, and then what starts that change in the story. And the first trailer you saw did that. You get that shot of them allowing the fumigation to come in, so you get the idea of their world and their characters, and then you get his friend saying, you should go and tutor someone, and that's kind of like your inciting incident, and then you kind of go off. Whereas in this one, we kind of just fast forwarded that. It's like very quick, like the first 5 or 10 seconds, to allow more room to get into the latter half stuff that is just a brief taste of kind of the darkness and the thriller nature of where the film's promising to take audiences.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Shall we move on to looking at the clip from the trailer for The Matrix, which you want to play?
Yeah, I didn't work on this, by the way. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
It's just a good tool, I think.
Yeah.
Trailers.
For sure. Yeah. I wasn't sure when I saw it was The Matrix if it was the most recent Matrix.
Right.
Or maybe.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll watch it, and then it'd be good to hear what you like about it.
OG Matrix, yeah.
that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
What is happening to me?
The answer is out there, Neo. It's the question that drives us.
What is the Matrix?
The Matrix is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
What truth?
They're watching you, Neo.
Human beings are a disease. You are a cancer of this planet. And we are the cure. Get me the hell out of here!
Welcome to the real world.
So you're here to save the world.
So what do you need? Guns. Lots of guns.
No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy. Because Kansas is going bye-bye.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
Okay, yeah, it's funny watching that now and thinking back to people seeing that in the 90s and having no concept of what the Matrix is and how kind of baffling that must have been, but exciting at the same time. So yeah, what is it that really grabs you about that trailer?
Well, yeah, I think it's exactly what you just said. It's a really good example. Well, it's just one of my favorite, Hollywood films ever. But it's the film does it as well. But it's an amazing to think like now we all know what the Matrix is, but in that marketing campaign, nobody did, as you just quite rightly said. So when you're looking at that and thinking of how many question marks, like I was talking about earlier, it's presenting. I mean, there's like one in like every shot of like, what is going on here? And it just looks so intriguing. And I think it's like, that's something you can take into stuff that's not even mainstream action blockbuster movies, or even something like Parasite that has mainstream appeal, because you're trying to, story theory of like setups and payoffs is often what you hear about people talking about, writers talking about. You're like setting things up and seeding these ideas, and then they get paid off later in the film. And more experimental films do that in a much more subtle degree, but you're still trying to find those setups to put in the trailer and the marketing, and you're hinting at the payoffs, which that trailer does amazingly. The kind of bullet time stuff, I mean, back then that would have just blown people's mind to see like 5 seconds of that, and the end's a little bit kitsch, but you're seeing so many little tastes, similar to, I hope, how we kind of tried to do the Parasite trailer, where you're getting these tastes of what those payoffs will be, and getting a good chunk of the setups, Neo being told, the Matrix has been pulled over your eyes, and that obviously is a payoff that then gives rise to more question marks, and it's just a really good basis, I think, to kind of a blueprint to kind of think about when creating trailers.
Okay, well, with that in mind, then why don't we watch the next trailer for The Quiet Girl, which you did work on. Very different, but then yeah, it'd be interesting to watch it, thinking about what you were just talking about, how you always need to kind of find those moments. So let's watch that.
How long should they keep her?
till after the baby?
She can't take it for as long as they like.
Well, ich an galinsa. Shasamach, good out of my spleche cartort.
Can work her. She'll head you out of house and home.
Oh, don't we all eat in spurts, same as we grow? We'll keep the child gladly.
A yawn, ha, party dul, ha boo.
Ni féidir le dul fánéach mar san. An a rion tú mé!
Ná bíocha ach láirt. You're a visigat.
Godfrey.
Búchail na ginsala ka umchig. Gan ledín wat.
Isn't your mammy good to you?
Colleen Cune and Colleen Cana.
Der si'r made is gaudy ar all.
The marrot egar liomsa. Ní áging ó riamh I diglas tronshéring.
Seo, look. Den tú sé. Ní gá dut rud a rá. Chuoinnig sin a gcónaí. Is mí duine nar thógan deis a bhéalach am dúnta. Is a chail mór an dá bhar.
Great. So yeah, as with Parasite, again, it's been a bit of a runaway success, as I understand it, The Quiet Girl, for the sort of film, but it is. So when you were approaching making that trailer, what were the kind of key things you were looking to get out of it?
Yeah, I think it probably, in fairness, a bit more of a puzzle and a bit more of a head scratcher, because with more art house and independent and less traditional films that don't have story with a capital S, you know, you're trying to find what the emotional resonance is in it and what those setups and payoffs that I was just talking about are. And there was a cut that existed of a Quiet Girl trailer before we came on board, and we just didn't think it was working. But when we were trying to work out why, it was a bit, you couldn't say straight away. And I think it's where you come back to that idea of reverse engineering the story and thinking like, what is this? For anyone who's seen The Quiet Girl, like, you have that inciting incident of she goes off and lives with a different family, but she's quite happy with them. Someone at our work said it's like Roald Dahl in reverse. Like, she goes and lives with a family, and then but she's happy. They're not nasty to her or anything. So dramatically speaking, that was a challenge to find like, well, what do we put here in the trailer? And I think watched the film a few times, and I realized that a lot of the emotional resonance is about her and a father figure. And we do amp it up a little bit more than it is in the actual film in that trailer. But once we put that in, that it's kind of like her foster mother figure accepts her, but the father figure doesn't immediately, then you've got some setups and payoffs that you can work with. And there's some kind of, you're hinting at that, you know, it's very different from Neo dodging bullets, but when the father figure puts the biscuit on the table, you're kind of hinting at where that story is going to go. And with his monologue at the end over the music that we're trying to really build to a crescendo moment, you're hoping that that's the promise. And I don't think it's mis-selling it. You're saying that that's what the film is about, and I think it is. And I think once we cracked that it was about that relationship, everything kind of fell much more into place. With, I should mention, we're not editing these ourselves, and we have amazing collaborators. So Hello Mozart worked on that one. They're a great trailer editing company, and we work with a lot of others as well, and they're key collaborators in this. So we all want to take all the credit in that process. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm keen to leave time for other people to ask questions, so I'll make this my last one. There's a lot of other stuff I could ask you, but I'm really interested to know from like a filmmaking perspective, with you as the filmmaker. Have you learned anything from also working on the trailer side of things, working to get trailers? Does it feed into to you coming up with ideas or coming up with shots, you know, generally?
Yeah, I think it's honed my skills, I would hope, as kind of a storyteller. I mean, I'm fortunate that the films I kind of want to make are those stories with a capital S. They are a little bit more broader and audience facing. But you can learn so much from watching a broad swathe of films. You know, I don't think anyone should be a snob, and if you are into more mainstream films, you should open your mind to more experimental fare. And I think working in Curzon, I've had the privilege of looking closely, like I just described. It's not just seeing a film, but really analysing a lot of art house movies, and I think that's helped a lot. But like a general lesson, I think, is that, as I said, I really believe in setups and payoffs, even if they are hidden deeper and more subtle in art house movies. I still think they're there. And I think that's really important to remember when filmmaking, and that also atmosphere can only get you so far. You know, it's you have to have atmosphere. But I think when I see trailers that I don't think are working, it's just the atmosphere. They're not doing the storytelling. So you need the two are cohesive. You need the two. And I think that's true of trailers, and it's true of really great movies as well. So I try and keep that in mind. I think that's a lesson I've learned.
Great, that's brilliant. Well, yeah, it's been great talking to you, Mark. I'll pass over to Jake again now and he'll take some questions from the Q&A.
Thanks, Tom.
Cheers for that, Tom. Brilliant questions, and what a pleasure to look back on those films as well. I mean, I would have been happy if it was a trailer for Matrix Resurrections as well, because I absolutely love that film too. In fact, I love any Matrix film. But let's dive into these Q&As. So kicking off with one from Christina. Mark, what would you say are some of the key principles of film marketing? And is there anywhere you would recommend to start learning marketing skills?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what we've just discussed about trying to find especially with The Quiet Girl there, about the emotional resonance is a key one. There are the more business side of things beside that. So you do that, and then learning what to watch films and understand who they're for is probably your key skill. That's, you know, finding your target demographic, age ranges, genders, socioeconomic backgrounds, that kind of thing. I think that comes with time, and then targeting those audiences has kind of never been easier since the advent of the internet and stuff, and you can get very specific. But I think if you want to do it, if you're not already doing marketing professionally and want to do it, I think every time you watch a film, just think who it is for and how would be the best place to get in touch with those people. You know, the audience, just the ones who watch, the audience for The Matrix is very different from the audience for The Quiet Girl. So how would you get in touch with both of them? Or let's look at, in a more modern one, like you said, The Matrix 4. How would you get in touch with that audience versus The Quiet Girl? You know, one's going to be sitting in more mainstream avenues. Maybe you get Twitch advertising. There's a lot of partnerships you can do with, like, gaming. There's a lot of stuff you can do on science fiction movie channels, etc. And then one is maybe more traditional media, like print media, and getting adverts in the Irish Times, for example.
I mean, I would have loved to have seen The Quiet Girl gaming Twitch stream strategy.
Maybe it would have worked.
That would have brought in.
Twitch is very expensive, so you've got to be sure.
Right. So one from Louise here, which is a very modern question. And so the hashtag on the Parasite teaser really grabbed me, which I think is hashtag act like you own the place, which is a great line. She said that's like a confirmation of what I'd seen in the video, and Louise hasn't seen the film, so it's totally fresh to the trailer. How important in and what process is there in coming up with a good hashtag early on?
Maybe I'm not the best place to answer. We don't do hashtags a lot. We did it for that film as an exception because we were seeding it very early and we wanted to just put a special cherry on it, and take something that wasn't being used by other territories. You know, they're using hashtag Parasite movie. And we just thought that it was that level of cheekiness that the film merited. You know, it could get away and do that. We also ran a competition very early on, about 3 months ahead of the film's release, which we needed to just get out there with the splash and start generating interest. And there was another teaser, a social teaser, that was to enter a competition, and people had to use that hashtag. So you needed one that was unique, that wasn't being used anywhere, and that really felt right for the film. Yeah. But we don't do it, you know, for The Quiet Girl. It would be hashtag The Quiet Girl film and stuff like that. So
I think, and it goes back to what you were saying about the different approach to marketing as well.
Yes.
Not every film has the same approach to it. You've got to treat them on a case-by-case basis. So Karim has asked, what are your thoughts on extremely short trailers that maybe have one setup and hint at a payoff or no payoff at all? So I guess these are those ultra teasers that become the norm these days.
I think it's good as part of a wider campaign. Like that stuff can be people's first entry into seeing or hearing of a film, and that's great. But the whole idea of those is that then if you pick their interest, that they go and look at a longer trailer or find out more about the film. I definitely think you need something out there that is, you know, a runtime isn't that's not important, the runtime. It's just about getting what I was talking about earlier, getting the inciting incident and that world of the characters, and then giving a taste of the payoffs and atmosphere, which usually takes around 1:15 to 1:45, you know. But like with films, the pacing isn't the runtime. It's you feel it. You feel if it's lethargic and if it's fatty and needs trimming down. Or sometimes you get an amazing trailer that's 2:30 and you feel like it's whipped by, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we've let our love of the Wachowskis seep into this conversation already. I'll point out there is an amazing trailer for their Cloud Atlas, which is 6 minutes long.
There we go.
It's amazing, and you don't feel like you're seeing all of the film, and you totally swept up in it.
Yeah.
I recommend that as well. It's a totally different trailer that's on the opposite end of the teaser spectrum.
Music's super important for the pacing, and that has an amazing soundtrack, that film, which they use in that trailer. Yeah,
it really does. All right, so Thomas Watson has asked, what kind of video editing software would you recommend?
We at work use Premiere Pro, the Creative Cloud. That's what I use. Like I said, we don't edit the trailers often ourselves. There have been a few occasions, but so I don't know what our agencies and partners are using. But Premiere, any of the ones that do what you need them to do and that you're well versed in, I'd use that. I just learned Premiere Pro. You know, I kind of know the keyboard shortcuts, so that's what I use. But some people like Final Cut, some people work on the Avid. So whatever. I wouldn't say one is better than the other if it's getting the job done.
And I would say that in the wider marketing of a film, your trailer is kind of a bit of hero content that can serve other uses as well. So a lot of your like things you might be cutting for social media that you will be putting in Premiere Pro, and that might be a 1-minute version that lives on Instagram or something. Yeah. So you have that suite, and that trailer can serve many masters.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking to then make 30-second cuts is a really important part of the process of having a 30-second version, which goes back to the question before. But you've got both existing out there then in the world.
So one from Hugo Santa Cruz here. I think is a really interesting question. How many times do you watch a film before you cut the trailer?
Really good question. It depends. on how much of a head scratcher it is. The Quiet Girl I watched quite a few times, which is not a problem because it's a beautiful film. But sometimes, you know, I think that's where stuff that isn't art house is a little bit more easy, because what I was talking about, the setups and payoffs are much more telegraphed. And so you're seeing them and instantly going, that will take that bit, that's your inciting incident, blah, blah, blah. And it falls together more. I'd say on average, probably 3 times is probably right if you're originating a trailer. By the end, you're scrubbing through, you know, to try and find moments, because you're writing briefs or talking with the editors and you're like, this moment, or you address your notes. I always do notes with time codes when I'm watching the film, because then you don't have to go, where was that moment? And, you know, you can't find it. I've been there before. And you're like, I know this exists. I didn't make it up. But yeah, so a notepad and pen is your best ally there.
So another one that I think would be really useful for a lot of the people that are watching this. So Mark, you make your own short films, and we'll have a lot of filmmakers in the Southeast as well making shorts too. And so when you're making a trailer or a teaser for a short, is that something that is that important? And if so, how is the approach different? Because I can't imagine you would maybe need a 2.5-minute trailer for an 8-minute film.
Yes. Yeah, I think by necessity those have to be shorter, and probably the tempo of what you can get out of it would just dictate that that's shorter anyway. Is it important? I made a trailer for one of my shorts. I didn't for another. It depends. Depends what you are going to use it for. I think film festivals kind of really like it if you've got that. It's an extra bonus, because then you might get to the top of some, you know, festival marketing, being on their website, you get a hero placement because you've done a trailer. I can't say that it's a guarantee though. I do it if you have a good idea of it and feel like it would be a fun thing to do. It can't be a bad thing, put it that way. And if you're interested in marketing, it's an amazing thing to do, because you're getting free practice of deconstructing, you know, a film. Sometimes the ones you've made are the hardest ones to deconstruct, you know. So I'd say in general, yes, you know, why not?
And have you noticed in terms of your skill, I suppose, how as an editor or as a viewer and analyzer of films, you have changed from over the time you spent in marketing and your own stories as well? So I suppose that over that decade now, your kind of approach to storytelling has shifted.
Yeah, I think there were points during my career where you felt like, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, but you felt like, I think this industry sometimes, it probably doesn't mean to, but can make, some people can feel like they're telling you what is the right thing to like, and what, especially as a filmmaker, like what is the right thing to make. And at points you can get pulled thinking, I should be doing this because this is what funding bodies want, this is what, you know, is the thing in vogue or something like that. And then if that is what you genuinely want to do, I think you should do it. But otherwise, I don't think anyone should be really telling you that. And that was a long lesson to learn. So I think I went through a bump of trying to develop my stories in something that is not where my passion completely is. And now it's been like, okay, you know, silence the noise, just do what you want to do. And then as you're learning, watching films, I don't think you have to work in the film industry, but just watching films and loving them and deconstructing them, hopefully your storytelling gets better. You know, like my last short I made, be coming up to, I think it's 4 years ago, and you want to make another short to show how your writing has evolved since then, you know, but obviously that's a whole process in itself, getting the funding for that. So sometimes you're like, you want to, it's like you you haven't uploaded your most recent photo to Instagram, you know. So there's more, but as long as you're developing, I think, and growing, that's a good thing.
Yeah. And so at Curzon, as we've shown with Parasite and The Quiet Girl, and looking at the entire slate of films you've released in your tenure, Faseo's got a good question here, which is, are there different rules for different types of films? So, for example, documentaries, shorts, features, maybe animation. How does the form of the film reshape what you're doing in the trailer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't worked on many documentaries. I've worked on a couple, but it's probably not so much my wheelhouse. I wouldn't say animation does, unless we're talking about the target audience. That's really what's changing it. And if it's animation that's aimed at kids or a family audience, I think that can alter the structure. But you just got to remember who the audience is and what do they know. Like that second Parasite trailer, the audience, a lot of them already know what the film is. It's on their radar. And for example, I just worked on Wim Wenders' retrospective. So we just cut a new trailer for Wings of Desire. We've got one coming out soon for Paris, Texas. We did one for the whole retrospective. And you'll see there's not so much plot exposition in that, because people know these. The people who be engaged with those films, the large majority, they know the movies already. You know, they've been out there. So you can go a little bit more tonal with those things. I think they're the main things that dictate it, rather than its medium. Yeah.
All right. So we have got a minute. Maybe we can stretch it to a few more. But our last thing is, of course, your streaming recommendations. And so these are 3 films that people can go out and watch. Maybe watch the whole film and then the trailers afterwards as a fun exercise as well. But do you want to just take us through your 3 recommendations, and quickly, I suppose, in 30 seconds for each one, why they've ended up on this list?
Okay, so my first one's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because I just was brought up on a strict diet of spaghetti westerns and absolutely love them. I love the operatic quality. I love that they're kind of fairy tales, but dark and grisly and violent. And I just think the showdown scene, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is just some of the best filmmaking ever, and shows the importance of music. Like, it's three dudes standing there for 4 minutes, and it is the most amazing thing you've ever seen. So I'd highly recommend that one. The second one I've got is Drag Me to Hell, which you can see on iPlayer at the moment. Big Sam Raimi fan. I'm a big horror movie fan. I think horror and comedy are, you know, a match made in heaven in terms of genre, and there's few filmmakers doing it better or have done it better than Sam Raimi. And Drag Me to Hell is just one of those, and has, for people who haven't seen it, has one of the best endings also. Endings are so important, and those 2 films really demonstrate that. And then Last and First Men is my last choice, which is sadly by Johan Johansson, who most people know as a film composer. He did a lot of Denis Villeneuve's films, Sicario, and he was working on Blade Runner, and then there was he sadly passed away very unexpectedly. But he wrote and directed this film before he did. It's an adaptation of a science fiction novel, but it's very art house. It is just an hour and a half of black and white 16mm footage of Soviet architecture, as Tilda Swinton narrates these aliens sending down their wisdom to us, who are us billions of years in the future. So they're kind of like gods telling us, you know, handing down some wisdom. And it's just it's a shame the film just passed and went, but it's an amazing piece of filmmaking. Very melancholy, very meditative experience to sit through.
And sounds like the kind of film you're probably glad you didn't have to cut a trailer for.
Yes, absolutely. That's a head scratcher. You'd be watching that one 15 times, I think, before you worked it out.
And I'm very happy to see Drag Me to Hell in there. I think along with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, two horror films where the title is lived up to.
Is lived up to. There's a promise. We're talking about setup and payoff. That those titles in themselves are a huge setup. So you're like, you better pay it off, and then when it does, it's that's what we go to the movies for, right?
That is what we go to. What? Ah, see, he knows how to sign it off as well. He's got that zinger on the end. This man spends too much time marketing films. He's now ending his own webinars with a sign off as well. That's the hashtag for it today. Now this is all going to end very dramatically. All this call will end, all for us three and everyone involved. So I'll do my thank yous now. Thank you so much to Tom and for Mark for joining us, and Tom for leading such a great interview, and Mark for spending so much time and getting into your career and everything that makes trailer editing so fascinating. And for everyone that joined us as well, it's been brilliant having you with us. And for everyone that submitted a question, those are really, really interesting stuff. But that is all we've got time for. There'll be more labs coming up across the year, so keep your eyes on the Film Hub Southeast social channels for more info on those. It's been brilliant having you with us, and I think that is about it. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Cheers, Tom. Cheers, Jake.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.